Just one moment, I'll tell you what the weather forecast is going to be for the next 10 days. If you can believe such a long-range forecast. Can you?
No.
Tomorrow, 14 and 9. 14 the high, 9 the low, then 12 on Monday, 8 on Tuesday, 9 on Wednesday. Gosh, it's mild for this time of year, ain't it? And then 8 and 8 and 8, and that's excellent. Meanwhile, it's going to be raining this evening in Glasgow, and raining tomorrow in Glasgow, and raining on Monday in Glasgow, and raining on Tuesday in Glasgow, and raining on Wednesday in Glasgow. On Thursday, no rain. Wow. For a whole 24 hours. Before, we can't really tell that far away, but I would expect that normal service will be resumed the following day. Other areas will have their own weather. So, bienvenue, welcome, come on in. Arch-Brexiteers is going to be very upset about what I'm going to say now.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Britain's Brexit transition could stretch to as long as 3 years. 3 years. It's just going to be a slow fade to the same. I've been saying this all along, over and over and over. Officials are said to be in talks with their Brussels counterparts about the possibility of extending the official government transition target of around 2 years by 12 months. Or extending it to, whenever. Just don't tell you-know-who, or he'll put him right off his breakfast beer.
I'm a nutcase.
Apparently, senior Whitehall officials are privately apprehensive about the possibility of a 2-year time limit. So privately apprehensive. They've got out of their chairs and they've gone to the windows and they've thrown open the windows and they've said, we're as mad as hell. They didn't say that. They just said, yeah, just at the very prospect. Nobody appears to know what they're doing. I think we entered into the the unwashed members of the general public, we had no idea what we were doing when we went into a vote one way or the other, but you'd think that the people in charge would have some clue. I mean, it's been blooming ages, ain't it? Nobody seems to have any idea what they're doing. People who are on the same side can't agree with each other, for crying out loud. Senior Whitehall officials are privately apprehensive about the possibility of a 2-year time limit, especially given the challenges presented by a potential hard Brexit, because that's what Mrs M wants, keeps going on and on and on about her hard Brexit. According to Her Majesty's Daily Telegraph, as the Cabinet continues to fracture over the terms of our leaving the EU, senior British officials have raised the possibility of extending the transition period, by which they mean, I expect, just extending it on and on and on until such time as people forget that even such a thing exists. And in about 5-10 years, something like that, they'll say, hey, we're out. Didn't you notice? Oh, we've been out for ages. In about 5 or 10 years, newspapers will remember that this is happening, because they won't want to go on about this for another 5 or 10 years, because people will take one look at the front cover of the paper and they'll think,
boring.
Oh, haven't you got anything else? Isn't there a sex story that you can dredge up from somewhere? Some titillation. And they'll say, hang on a minute, aren't we supposed to have left the EU? We're still, everything's the same. Just you wait. You mark my words. Set your watch by it. In about 5 years' time, the clock will strike, and people will say, "Hang on, it's the same." And the usual suspects are going purple-faced berserk at the very idea of extending this transition period. As you can expect, they've pegged their future political careers on placating the aged Brexiteer ultras, and they can see their prospects dissipating on the wind like a bad smell. Chief among whom is comedy cartoon posho Jacob Rees-Mogg. I can't believe that man is a thing. No, I don't mean he's a thing. I mean, that Mogmentum and the people think he's smogtastic, or I don't know, whatever word they are appending to him. Jacob Rees-Mogg is apparently still a thing, and he told the Telegraph that Britain is heading for Brino. Anybody have any idea what Brino means? That is Brexit in name only. Like I've been saying all along, holy smoke, if you didn't know any better, you'd think that I'd know a thing or two. I've been saying this forever. It's too important. They're the biggest trading free trade organisation in the world, and they're right there. On a good day, you could spit that far. You'd have to be off your chump to want to turn your back on that vast opportunity. But instead, the government is busy going to New Zealand to see if we can't rustle up some of that excellent sheep trading. You'd have to leave the planet. You'd have to go to the moon to get further away. Our whole world's gone insane. You ain't going to notice the difference when we're out. I've been saying this all along. And it seems to be just me. I mean, am I the only person that's saying this, that you won't notice the difference when we're out? You'll just be a bit poorer, that's all. We'll still be surrounded by foreigners, because until robots can serve coffee and build walls and spit and fall over on a football field, we will need foreigners to do the jobs that we don't want to do or can't do. That is, like I say, until robots take over.
Affirmative.
And come and terminate us.
Correct.
Which is going to happen sooner than you know, by the way. And all sorts of jobs that you think would be absolutely safe are going to be unsafe. Which is the opposite of safe. People who have, got actual real-life degrees, who went to university and did things other than underwater soot juggling or whatever it is the kids are learning these days, who went and did, proper things like learning accountancy.
Boring.
Or exciting things like that, like lawyering. All of you people are going to get fired too. You don't know it's coming, but it's on its way. You're P45. Meanwhile, by the way, Philip Hammond, he's the Chancellor, he urged a modest break from the EU yesterday and was met with a tidal wave that would have sunk Moby Dick. People went apoplectic. A modest break from the EU, of course. Don't that seem like the reasonable adult thing to suggest? Something reasonable and grown up. And Downing Street slapped him down, presumably because Mrs M doesn't want to have to fight with Smog and Bozo of the FO and the Chancellor and Jezza Corbyn and President Trump all at the same time. One at a time, please. So Downing Street had to slap him down, Philip Hammond, the Chancellor, for saying something completely sensible. And Philip Hammond slunk away like a whipped kitten. No, he didn't. He stood his ground. And he said that the government must find a middle way to prevent damage to the economy. And the Brexiteer ultras said, we don't care if we do die. Or words to that effect. But that's his job. Philip Hammond, the Chancellor. That's what he does for a living. Looks after the economy for the benefit of all of us. Well, that's supposed to be what his job is. If you just take the benefit for all of us out, that is his actual job. He looks after the economy. As much as any Chancellor actually does do that, rather than being blown about by the winds of change and taking credit for it if it goes well and blaming the previous incumbent if it goes badly. I don't actually think they do much of anything at all, but, it's his job, and one of his requirements, one of his duties, is to speak out about what would be, in his belief, the best way for the benefit of the economy. And a modest break from the EU does seem like it would be beneficial, certainly in the short term. I mean, even if in the long term, and no politician is remotely interested in the long term, you know that's true. People just, they don't do long-term thinking. We're all about the short term. It's like we're Pavlov's dogs. The little bell goes off, and we start to salivate. Short-term thinking. And so he spoke out about this to ameliorate any negative effects in the short term about a substantive break from our bestest friends in the EU. And the response that he got was just off the scale. What's happened to the world over the last year or so? What on earth has happened to the IQ levels of people on this planet? I mean, I know that one thing happened.
You are going to love President Trump.
The Ancient Orange in the White House happened, but other than that, don't you get the feeling that people are more at each other's throats than ever before? Not just in cars either. I mean, we've taken that that fury that we express online and in cars, in the comfort and safety of being in a metal box or being totally anonymous at home, clacking away on our keyboard, and we've externalized it. Now everybody's blooming furious all the time. Get Lucy back in the building and she'll explain it to us. She'll calm us all down. She'll give us breathing exercises, something like that. In. Hold it. That's Philip Hammond's job, to say things that he think would benefit the economy. Because otherwise, why are we paying him all that money? I mean, he ain't cheap. It's like a six-figure salary. What's the point of having a bloke who's pulling a six-figure salary if all we want him to do is sit down and shut up? And the people that went nuclear on him, they don't care what happens as long as they can claim a victory. Well, there's no such thing as a victory in this situation. Only a mitigation of the disastrous effects of the change that we're being forced to go through because a previous Prime Minister promised us a referendum on a question that none of us understood. We're still not missing you, David Cameron, by the way, in case you were interested.
I think this is nonsense.
Yeah. He's busy scouring the Bowden catalogue to see if he can find a polo shirt that comes in hefty. See, he's out there buying talcum powder in bulk to squeeze himself in one of those wetsuits. On the beach where children can see you. Oh, it's usually a frothing fury, you know. Oh, my God, you should have seen me in the hours just after I took... I laid down on my bed to take a little disco nap. And then when I got up, I thought I'm going to really get into it and get stuck in and do some excellent work for this show. And could I? No. Why? Windows, that's why. Thanks a lot, Bill Gates. Boy, I'd like to take him and...
I'd like to punch him in the face.
I would like to punch Bill Gates in the face. Is that a wrong thing to say? Actually, maybe it's not his fault. Maybe it's the Russians' fault. In fact, I suspect that it is. Oh, my computer kept crashing and Okay, I had about 20 pages of a certain well-known newspaper's website, all open at the same time, which is a big mistake, huge. And I put my computer into sleepy by time, and then I came back and it wouldn't wake up again. And I cajoled it, and I stroked it, and I screamed at it, and I banged the desk, and I got up and I clenched my fist, and I went through the whole gamut of unhinged emotions. And it just kept crashing and crashing and crashing, and it just wouldn't open up any of the pages. And you know what? What would be helpful is if the web pages for well-known newspaper sites weren't so alive with activity. For crying out loud, they've got adverts on the left and adverts on the right and adverts within the actual text itself, and there's just a blizzard of pictures. I mean, they'll do like 3 words, and then there'll be 6 pictures, and then another 3 words. And the videos, oh, that drives me up the wall. Those videos that follow you. You don't want to watch a blooming video of Philip Hammond or Theresa May fighting with her own face. And so you scroll down the piece, but the video follows you. Every single page, it's the same. Drives me mad, and drives my computer up the wall as well. It can't stand it. And so it breaks down over and over and over again. I practically put a disc out, not the computer disc, my disc, leaning over the computer just to switch it off, because it wouldn't take any instructions of any kind whatsoever. Bill Gates. It took 2 hours just to get it to do anything. I was pulling my hair out. And then I thought, maybe it's the Russians. I bet it's Vlad the Insaner who's personally interfering with my device. And so I looked inside, and it had one of those, a vestige of a program that I don't ever remember putting on there, that has been linked with the Kremlin.
Oh, no.
And so what did I do? I deleted it with great vengeance and made sure that every little last scrap of it was exterminated, dead. And suddenly the computer burst into life again, as though it had been given a hit of oxygen and an injection to the heart. So it was Vladimir Putin who was messing with this show. I can't believe it. But anyway, you know me, I never complain. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, Philip Hammond. Philip Hammond was trying to save the day. He was trying to protect us from the negative economic effects of this massively complex extrication process to get us out of the EU. And I know that people think about this in sort of vague, amorphous terms, but just think about it as a business person who makes widgets, for instance. A business person who makes widgets and is selling them to French France and to Germany and Belgium, and he's having an excellent time, and he's eyeing up a Bentley. And then suddenly this daft referendum comes along, and previous to which nobody was talking about the excuse me, the EU at all. Not one single person.
I'm a nutcase.
Apart from him. Nobody was talking about the EU. I was mentioning this yesterday. Can you remember what we were talking about before the referendum? Because it certainly wasn't the EU. People weren't talking to or calling up in a blazing fury, waiting to bellow at me on LBC for being a loony, lefty, EU-loving hippie freak. You and James O'Brien. Wasn't getting any of that. Didn't get any of that. And then suddenly it's all anything that anybody cares about. It's the only thing that anybody cares about after the referendum. Suddenly the political soul of this great nation of ours has been soured by this one issue. And everybody's fighting everybody else, and the old hates the young, and the left hates the right, and the middle class hates the working class, and everybody hates the upper class. And so anyway, Philip Hammond was trying to ameliorate the negative effects of extricating ourselves from this complex process, and I was trying to put it into the terms of an individual. So this bloke is selling widgets, or I don't know, intimate bedroom devices.
Disgusting.
To France, where they go in for that sort of thing. And suddenly it's going to get a tax slapped on it. And so the French people, they go for their amusements to a French company that used to be slightly more expensive, but now is significantly cheaper. So where is he going to sell his, his devices of intimate titillation? He's going to have to go and look somewhere else. And so he won't be able to buy his Bentley anymore. And his business is going to be in dire straits. And we've got to think about it like that. But people can't just magically sell to other, like to New Zealand. How would you even begin to do that if you're a sole trader or a very small company? You just have to suck it up. The extra tax that goes on the products that go to Europe, where he used to sell most of his disgusting devices. Nobody's really talked about that. They keep talking about, oh, we're going to get a trade deal with this and that and the other. And okay, well then what? Then somebody's going to have to go to that country, go all the way over to blooming New Zealand or China or someplace like that. And they're going to have to find a new market and find shops that want to sell their stuff. But they've done all that already. They've gone to France and Germany, and they've got Belgium on the phone. It's only over there. There's nobody talking about any of this. the actual realities of what it is that we're about to do. Pull away from the biggest free market on earth in order to try and sell to the Philippines. we could sell the same stuff, yeah, but it's not the government that's doing it. It's individuals. It's people running businesses. And nobody's talking about that. They're just talking about, oh, we'll have a free trade deal with Russia. Well, that's great. But you can't just send it to Russia. You got to find somebody there who wants it. I think I should be the Prime Minister of this country. Who's with me? Hands up. Show of hands. Let me count. No one. Let's put me in my place. So anyway, Philip Hammond is making this. Well, he wasn't making that case. Nobody's made that case, as far as I'm aware, unless I've misread the situation. It's just me. So maybe I'm getting that wrong. Philip Hammond was told to put a sock in it because of him, making efforts to do the job that we pay him vast amounts of money to do. And yesterday, guess who? Brexit Secretary David Davis said that the free movement of EU citizens in Britain will continue in all but name until at least 2021. What year is it now? It's 2016, so that's 2021. It's like, 8 years? Something like that. Another 8 years, I think you'll find. Which caused the Brexiteer group of MPs to release a considered statement. Yeah, free movement of EU citizens in Britain until 2021. And the government spokesman said, that is a categoric lie. Wow. They really are at each other's throats. David Davis, the Brexit secretary, said that there's going to be free movement of EU citizens in Britain until 2021, at least. And a government spokesman said, that's a lie. Liar! And this is a bigger clown show than they've got going on in the White House. Holy smoke, the stuff that goes on, it's just, it's boggling my tiny mind just thinking about it. So anyway, we'll get to more of that, and unless I'm getting any of this wrong, in which case you must correct me. Something that Donald Trump has said that's just fantastically stupid, and I mean that in the nicest possible way.
Oh, shut up!
But I can't talk about it until after midnight. Apparently it's embargoed. I am unable to discuss it with you until after midnight. It's not my fault. I'm talking to Jackie in Enfield. Oh, Jackie.
Oh, hello. How are you?
I'm great, mate.
That's good. That's good. I just wanted to say that I'm voting for you. Well, you got 2 votes from here to be our Prime Minister.
Oh.
And me and my sister would definitely vote for you. She doesn't know yet. I'm going to tell her afterwards.
Right. I've got absolutely no idea what I stand for or what my positions are on the issues, but you're going to vote for me anyway.
Well, I agree with everything you say, so...
Well,
yeah, apart from a couple of things, but
Well, a couple of things.
Exactly.
All right. Well, let's just agree that I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah. Did you hear about that young student who's campaigning for all the universities, everyone to campaign to remain in the EU?
No.
Did you hear about that? Yeah. He was talking. I can't remember his name, but he was talking to the guy at 8 o'clock this morning, and he said that
he is very good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. He's taken the place of Andrew, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, I think he's an Andrew as well, but I can't remember him anyway. But he's campaigning so that we can stay in the EU.
Right. So, how old is this person?
Oh, he's at university.
Oh, at university, so he's almost a grown-up.
Yeah.
Right. He's campaigning, is he?
Yeah, so
well, that'll work. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I don't know what he'll do, but like you say, I mean, I don't know. It's all up in the air at the moment, isn't it? We don't know what's going on.
I don't think anybody has any idea what's going on. It's not just you and me, Jackie. No one has a clue what is going on, where we're going, or what the destination is. No, well, that's the two ways of saying the same thing. We don't know where we're going, but at least we know where the destination is.
But I do know that the Brexiteers keep moaning.
Yeah. On and on and on.
Stop whining.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Moan, moan, moan.
I know, they won and they're moaning. Can you imagine what it'd be like if they'd lost?
Yes.
Oh, Struth, we'd never hear the end of it.
Well, we're all keeping quiet on this side, so
Oh, yeah. All right.
let them do all the moaning.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Jackie.
Thank you.
I appreciate your support. This message says, when will people learn that the difficulties we are having leaving the EU is a sign of how much good we're undoing with Brexit? That's going to upset a lot of people. Martin says, Jacob Rees-Mogg says it's about getting cheaper children's clothes. They're currently like £2 at Lidl, dear, says Martin. And Jacob Rees-Mogg would say, Lidl? What's that? He actually did say that. Theresa May has been told by comedy cartoon posho Jacob Rees-Mogg that that Brexit will mean cheaper clothes and food. Yeah, because, rather than import apples from France, we could import them from New Zealand instead, because that would make much more sense. He says we can get cheap food from China. Hands up who wants to eat cheap food from China. Show of hands. Keep them up while I count. Exactly. He says we can get cheaper food and clothing, such as from the US, India, China, and Brazil. Well, the US, you would assume, would have the best sort of the quality control that would be most like that we currently enjoy from the EU. And they wash their chickens in formaldehyde, acid, something like that, to rid them of their disgusting pestilence and diseases. Sounds like dinner, don't it? No thanks. Paul says, I think a Terminator robot has already arrived from the future to start wiping us out. He's in charge of NHS and social care. Well, there was this thing that came out today which was really alarming about the cancelled operations. Did you see that? I could take a short detour. Sure, why not? 3 in 4 health trusts are denying hip and knee replacement surgery to patients who are not in enough pain. That's what they're saying. Sufferers are turned away unless they are judged to be in distress for most of the day, or are unable to sleep, or are taking heavy-duty painkillers non-stop. I could do with a couple of pints of heavy-duty painkiller right now, as a matter of fact. Under strict rationing rules, some trusts insist that patients must be largely incapacitated, in need of a walking stick, a frame, or a wheelchair. In other cases, the pain must be so intense it is a struggle to carry out basic activities such as washing or dressing. This is the excellent NHS that is the envy of the world. This is just ridiculous. I mean, it's amazing. We're the 5th largest economy in the world. And this is what we're reduced to. Our NHS is not a health service anymore. Let's get that notion out of our minds. We do not have a health service anymore. We have an emergency service, not a health service. Campaigners said that hip and knee patients were easy targets for cost cutting. Yeah, well, they're easy targets because they can't move very quickly. Liz McAnulty of the Patients Association said, as a result of funding pressure, preconditions for surgery are becoming a common way to make savings. Well, ain't that great? You've got to be in extreme pain, but not just for a little while, for a long while. Said Liz of the Patients Association. She said, restrictions on joint replacement surgery and obliging patients to stop smoking or lose weight before they'll be operated on are becoming ever more frequent. While these may be sensible and desirable actions for people to take, they're not medically necessary, and commissioning groups are increasingly frank that it's all about cost savings. Of course it is. They're just easy pickings. Oh, well, you put on a little bit of weight there. And so, unfortunately, we're unable to save your life. Don't fall over on the way out. An average hip replacement costs £9,000, while a knee replacement is slightly cheaper at about £6,500. You'd think it'd be the other way around, because knees are way more complicated than hips, ain't they? Somebody should tell the doctors they've got no idea what they're doing. They should always consult me beforehand for compiling a bill. Hips, There's just a ball on a socket, ain't it? But knees are they're difficult, you would think, complicated. They move this way and that. A senior vice president of the Royal College of Surgeons said the savings would prove illusory. He said, we recognise the NHS is under increasing financial pressure, but this does not excuse these short-sighted rationing policies. And there it is in a nutshell. Short-sighted. Short-termism. Save money in the short term, and to hell with the long term, because the politicians who are making these decisions aren't going to be around in the long term. They'll be busy with their feet up, smoking a cigar, and congratulating themselves on a job well done. It's like Gordon Brown and his excellent public-private finance initiatives, which we'll be paying for through the nose forever and a day. Short-termism. We could build a shiny new hospital, but we don't have to pay for it immediately. We just have to pay for it in smaller amounts, but forever. And so it looks like we're doing something, and it looks like we've just magicked money out of thin air, but we haven't, actually. We're saddling the bill on our children and our children's children. Thanks a lot, Gordon Brown. We're still not missing you either. What he's doing now? What's Gordon Brown doing now? Does anybody care?
No.
Anyway, this fella, this senior vice president of the Royal College of Surgeons said, I mean, you'd think he would know a thing or two. He said, restricting surgery simply delays the inevitable, simultaneously adding to the overall cost, often prolonging the use of pain relief, severely impacting patients' quality of life, and particularly among the elderly, increasing the need for social care. Yeah, but apart from that, how is it?
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, but he's an expert in possession of facts, so nobody is remotely interested in anything he has to say. God. What kind of a country is this that we can write an open check, an unlimited amount, for a woman who lives the richest life of anybody that has ever existed, to titivate her one of her numerous palaces to her precise specifications, and another open check for tarting up the Houses of Parliament, which are currently under wraps, and another a much bigger, much more vast open checkbook for weapons of mass destruction. But we can't save people's lives, well, or we can't improve people's lives who are in constant pain. I think that's embarrassing. But maybe that's just me. Rejected patients, if you're lucky enough to have been rejected for an operation to relieve you of your constant pain, you will be told to try installing handrails at home, perform stretches, or buy special shoes. I think that's what Theresa May's got. She's got no end of special shoes. They are in lieu of a personality. So that's what the NHS has told you to do. In the fifth, the richest economy in the world. We can't relieve your constant grinding, agonising pain, but we will invite you to go away and buy some new shoes. Or you could try sitting down and shutting up. Would be a good idea. Apparently you will only be considered for surgery when you have tried all of these measures for at least 6 months. So people don't suffer, well, usually people suffer for a little while before going to the doctor. And so you'll suffer for a month, maybe 2 months before going to the doctor. And you can't see the doctor immediately, of course. You can only see the doctor in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whenever. And the doctor will and ah. And of course the doctor, the GP, he or she doesn't actually do anything. They just know a man or woman who does. And so they'll put you on a list to go and see somebody. And that'll be another 6 months. So it's going to be over a year before you're told that nobody can do anything for you because we've run out of money. God. Apparently, if patients meet the criteria and have tried cheaper treatments for 6 months, if you've tried to hobbling about in your brand new shoes, then you may have to wait up to another year before your operation can finally take place. Or, if you've got money, You can call up your private surgeon and he'll see you today. The restrictions for hip and knee replacements are very similar to those previously used by health trusts to deny patients cataract surgery. Yes, because, if you lose your sight, who cares? You just use your ears. Trusts were told to abandon these rules by the health watchdog NICE, which isn't nice.
Affirmative.
What an acronym, NICE. They're not nice. They were told to abandon these rules after the Daily Mail exposed cases where patients were being turned away unless they were nearly blind. And we appreciate the Daily Mail for their good work in this regard.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awful. We do have a two-tier health service in this country. If you are rich, if you are extremely well off and you can afford health insurance, which is vastly expensive, then you will be seen now. The doctor will walk out into the comfortable waiting room where you've been enjoying free biscuits and coffee, and he will shake your hand and introduce himself to you personally. And then he will walk you to his office where he'll give you as much time as you like. And then he will schedule you in for your immediate treatment the next day. Or you could go to the NHS and be shown the door. Here's Dagenham. Hello, Pat.
Hi. Yeah.
Pat.
I think you're really funny.
Oh, thanks, Pat.
Yeah, I always listen to your programme.
Well, it's the best medicine, isn't it, laughing?
Yeah, it is.
If you can't see the doctor, then that's all you've got left. Yeah, that and drink.
I've got very good doctors, so I'm okay. You have to wait a bit, but
A lot, yeah.
you're dying, you can go to A&E and you're queuing down the road to get into it. But
If it is an emergency, then I think the NHS is probably a good service. Anything other than that, and unfortunately we haven't got the money. Apparently.
well, we had to go there the other night to Queen's in Romford, and my friend was quite ill.
To Queen's?
And we had to wait for ages. In the end, we gave up.
You went with two Queens? Is that what you're saying?
It's Queen's Hospital. Not
Oh, you went to Queen's Hospital. I thought you went to hospital with two Queens. Elton was feeling a bit iffy that night.
But anyway, just, talking about Brexit, I'm trying to give up smoking and give up smoking.
Yeah, give it up, Pat.
Yeah. Do you smoke?
No.
Good. A horrible habit.
Yeah. Have you tried the vapes? Do you vape, baby?
No, that's stupid because you're still getting the nicotine.
Well, yeah, it's the nicotine is that's the thing that you're addicted to. You apart from all the other carcinogenic stuff that they stick in there in order to increase your cravings.
Yeah.
But
nicotine is the biggest craver out of it.
But that's the reason that people vape is so they can get the nicotine without all the other the poisonous stuff that they stick in cigarettes, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's true. But you're still getting the nicotine can't be good for you either.
Well, no, probably not. Well, sticking anything in your mouth and then setting fire to it is probably not a good idea.
I set fire to my hair the other day.
Did you?
And I burnt my eyelashes off.
Wow. Were you smoking crack? What were you doing, Pat?
No, it was slightly windy, and I was at the vet's, and I walked back into the vet's, and a girl said, "You've burnt your hair." I said, "Oh."
How did you do that?
It caught fire.
Oh, hairspray?
Lighting a roll up.
Was it hairspray?
No, just my hair.
Right.
No, just my hair. Yeah.
But how did your hair burst into flames? I mean, you must cover it with products. Do you use products?
Oh, I don't.
No.
But when you're lighting a roll up or a cigarette,
yeah,
the light and it's windy out.
Mm-hmm.
The wind blows.
Well, what were you trying to light your cigarette off? A tiki torch? You missed. If it was a lighter, it'd have to be a massive flame to hit your hair. I mean, was it a lack of aiming on you? Were you drunk, Pat? Is that what this was?
Was it what?
Were you? Why did you have to go to the vet?
Oh, I've got a lot of cats. So.
Oh, a lot of cats.
Yeah. I've
Right.
just a little straying now. I'm bringing him round. He's
Approximately how many cats is a lot?
about 9.
9 is a lot. Yeah, that's a lot.
Really, not really.
It's a lot.
You don't notice 9.
Well, I would.
You would, yeah.
Yes.
Don't,
But I
yeah.
suppose if you gradually add to them, then you might not notice their accumulation. But if
mean-
you went from 0 to 9, then you'd notice it.
Oh, it'd be difficult.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
Mm.
But as they come in a bit gradually, I don't take any more in anyway now.
Right.
So that's good.
So what's your favourite?
Charlie Longlegs.
I knew you were going to say that. I have no idea you were going to say that.
Oh, you must have heard it before.
I bet it's a ginger cat.
He's black and white.
As I said, black and white.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you got that right in the beginning then,
see?
didn't you?
Correct.
Correct.
Well, I hope your cat's all right.
Yeah, my cats are fine.
Yeah. Just don't set fire to them, that's all.
No, I won't say. No, I've got to give up. I will. I've got my patches and I shall give up.
Right.
Yeah. All this Brexit crap. God. What are we going to do? What are we going to do?
I don't think we'll have to do anything, Pat. We'll just sit back and watch it all unfold.
In a mess.
Yeah, but at least we've done our bit by going to the polls and marking a cross next to whatever we thought, and
Remain.
the rest of it is up to them, and they're going to fight themselves to a standstill. To absolutely no effect whatsoever. I think that when they announce that the deal is done and finally we're out and we have left the pernicious influence of the socialist European experiment, then nobody will notice the difference.
I'll tell you something. My friend said that he reads The Guardian, which I like too, and he said that they'll never give up trying to get out now, because if they did and there was an election, then the other bloke could get in. I can't remember his name.
Jezza. Uncle Jezza.
Jellybon.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah.
I think Jeremy Corbyn will get in because if not the next time, then the time after that, assuming that he's still around and hasn't turned into a
And
fossil.
the reason he isn't doing anything about Brexit or Remain
Yeah.
is because most people voted for him in the areas where they voted out.
Right. Yeah.
And he wants to keep them on side to get him on his throne.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that position is not really tenable if you take the direction of movement of the people of this great nation, because we're changing our mind. Even the people that were adamant that they wanted to leave the EU are now changing their minds.
I know.
Yeah.
Even people in those areas are changing their minds now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
precisely so. All right. Well, good luck with the not smoke. Don't you when you have those those nicotine patches. You're not smoking those, are you, Pat?
I just put one and I lick it and lick it and
Yeah.
lick it.
So yummy. All right. Thanks a lot, Pat. This says politicians won't ever bring anything in that will affect them. Well, that will affect them negatively, correct. Oh, so there's throats about tarting up the Houses of Parliament, aren't they? Mrs M's getting in the neck about all of that. I might get into that a while. Richard says, oh, by the way, I was sitting here, I'd sat here for an hour and the lights hadn't gone out. I was talking about this yesterday. We have an issue with the lights, in that if I don't get up, or it used to be before the engineers came into this place and did something. I don't know, because last week I had to be, I broadcast from another place. And because they were in here doing something, it all looks the same to me. I've got no idea what they were doing. They weren't decorating, that's for sure. But then I thought, hey, it occurred to me, hey, you know what? I haven't moved yesterday for like 2 hours, and the lights hadn't gone out because there's normally on a timer, and unless a thing in the ceiling detects movement, it turns the light out in order to save the planet. And I thought maybe that's what they were doing. Maybe somebody has actually listened to me and instructed engineers to come in and fix my problem. And as I was having that thought, the lights went out. At that moment. And again, just as the news was on there, I was looking at the clock going, hey, you know what, I haven't moved in an hour. And normally the lights would have gone off at about past, about 30 minutes in of no movement, and they didn't. I thought, maybe it has been fixed. And at that second that I had that thought, the lights went out. Oh. So I momentarily I thought that my problem had been solved. And then I was cruelly disabused of that notion. Oh well, never mind. You know me, I never complain.
Stop whining.
Richard says, Brexit. The true vote was not 52 to 48%. If you assume most of the did not vote were content with the status quo, then the votes would be, say, 10 million pro-leave, but 30 million for no change, i.e. it nullifies the result. Yeah, but don't tell you-know-who.
I'm a nutcase.
He'll flip his fedora. That's a good point, though. I hadn't thunk about that. The people who didn't vote, you would assume that they would be more content with the status quo, or they're just not bothered. They don't care, which implies that they're happy with the way things are. It's only people who are exercised and who are dissatisfied with the way things are that went out and voted, hell no, we won't stay, or we must go. So yeah, that's a good point. 10 million pro-leave, 30 million for no change. There it is, the will of the people, case closed, move along, nothing to see here. And Lynn says, don't be a miser, buy the print copy of the newspaper, much more enjoyable and easier to read. Presumably in relation to me reading, talking some moments ago about reading the newspaper online. And you are completely correct in every respect there, Lynn. And I've mentioned that frequently. It's a much more satisfying thing to read a newspaper, and we will miss them when they're gone, or at least people that are used to reading physical print dead tree press. Because, and I've mentioned this many times, it has an end. You know where the end is going to be. Whereas the news online has no end. It goes on forever. It's dissatisfying in that regard. There is no conclusion to your reading. It just goes on and on and on, and it puts you on edge. It creates a certain tension, even though you're not aware of it. Yes, it's more relaxing. As much as reading the stories about other people's misfortunes can be relaxing. Yeah, I got a book out. Thanks for asking. It's called My Tremendous Year in the Huge Shadow of Donald Trump's Awesome Orange Bigliness. And it's available in ebook and paperback. And the ebook is $2.99 and the paperback's $6.99 just because of the cost of printing the book and physically sending it through the post. And much to my surprise, the paperback is selling more than the ebook, even though it's more than double the cost. I was really taken aback. I didn't think I would sell any paperbacks at all, but they're flying off the shelves. Whereas the e-book is, I don't know, do people still do e-books? Is that over? I bet my glamorous assistant knows whether it's over or not, because she's hipping with it.
I like an e-book.
See? And what do you think about my e-book?
The best e-book I've ever read, obviously.
She's lying about that. Clacton. Hello, Ben.
Hello.
Hello, Ben.
You mentioned Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Yeah.
He mentioned to a select committee on Brexit that we'd be better off all these European health and safety rules. We can get rid of all them and adopt India's health and safety rules.
Oh, yeah, great.
He actually said that.
Tell Prince Philip that and see what he says.
Well, this is a country. This is a country who lose 30,000 people get run over by trains every year, and 15,000 people die on the road every year, and there's no health and safety, massive bribery all over the place. And then you've got Jeremy Hunt at the Select Committee again, saying that, we're now looking after social care, which we was responsible for anyway. and it's a great opportunity for big business to move into social care and privatise. And they're doing a great job already, aren't they? I mean, the hospitals can't send people home because it's not happening.
Yeah, because there's nowhere for them. There's no one to treat them at home, so they can't release them because it would be a danger to their health, and the hospitals have to take that into account. So they're bed blocking. Yeah, and
So
once
people,
again, it's short-termism. They didn't want to spend the money on helping people at home because they would benefit financially in the short term. But what that means is the unintended negative consequence is that it costs the people aren't being released from hospital, and it costs way more to keep them in hospital than it would to have somebody come and visit them at home.
Well, I think it wasn't unintended. I think it was intended to fill the pockets of the people that support them. But I mean, I actually worked in social care in the 80s when it was done properly.
Right.
Direct labour in the council, and we used to communicate with hospitals, local hospitals. There was a great service, and people were looked after. I mean, even the Meals on Wheels people used to check on people to make sure they were safe and healthy. And if they weren't, they had to start the process, and they were looked after and kept out of hospital.
Yeah.
And the Queen, the Queen you mentioned as well, she's the richest landowner in the world. They said that her wealth is worth 1.7 trillion, and we've got a housing crisis. you know, they could sort of trickle down some of that.
Yeah,
they could
it would be nice, you know, just every now and again to dole some out to her poor impoverished subjects. Yeah.
Yes, and
but the money only flows in the other direction, apparently.
Well, I went to Cambridge recently with my granddaughter because she's applying to go there. And I was extremely surprised when I went. And you think Cambridge, oh, wonderful. Nearly every doorway there's a young person sleeping in a sleeping bag. I mean, and got a handout and sort of trying to survive because the government stopped their housing benefit. Because they can't get housing benefit anymore if you're between 16 and 21. You can't get housing benefit. And they wonder why people are sleeping on the streets.
And meanwhile, the Queen's income, I think, didn't it just double? It just went up by a massive amount, so that she can, or that we can pay for the repairs to one of her palaces, one of the ones that she doesn't even actually like.
Well, 1.7 trillion would actually solve the whole country's deficit.
Well, it would, yeah, that's right. We look forward to a check in the post, Your Majesty. Appreciate your cooperation. All right, thanks a lot. People of this country have been hypnotised into continually throwing money like against gravity. It's not trickle-down economics like George W. Bush used to bang on about.
Absolutely.
There's no such thing as trickle-down economics. It's trickle-up economics. The money goes from the poor to the rich. And we're under this constant barrage, this publicity machine from the House of Windsor to keep us in our place. And the latest instalment of which is Meghan Sparkles. Oh, she's so fantastic. Oh, she's lovely. Look at that smile. Oh, she's so lovely. I can't wait to the wedding. You know, God, truth. And people will be sending her gifts. Scrimping and saving from their meagre income in order to send a member of a family who has everything something. We've lost our minds. Rory says Brexit is an opportunity to sell all our brilliant fruit, veg and meat to Australia and New Zealand as long as they don't mind a 6-month wait for it to get there. I always wondered why do we have apples from New Zealand? Why is it easier to buy apples from New Zealand in this country than it is from this country? I mean, we're a country that makes apples we used to. But no, they're from New Zealand. What I found out a little while ago is they might not have actually grown this year. They might be years old. The apples in your supermarket might be years old. Because they keep them in giant factories, which I'm sure are very, very clean. You know, like factories are. And they pump them with, I don't know, some sort of gaseous substance.
Disgusting.
Yes. which is why I always wash my fruit with washing up liquid. Is that just me? Because if you just rinse it, then you aren't getting off all of the ick and the dirt and the scuzz all over it. Imagine how disgusting. No, put it in some fairy liquid. Give it a good rinse. Oh, I just said a product name. I meant not to say a product name. I was on the phone to Dyson the other day. I was complaining about the lack of functioning of one of their products, and I kept referring to it as a Hoover. I kept thinking, stop saying Hoover to these people. Must be driving them up the wall. This says, we already have a trade deal with China. Everything I pick up in my house is stamped made in China, even the China. Everything is made in China. But things are changing. Things never stay the same. There's going to be a new world order, and pretty soon we'll be making cheap plastic crap for the Chinese. Andrew says, 15 minutes ago you gave us a relaxation breathing exercise. You told us to breathe in and then hold it, but not to breathe out. We followed your instructions, and now my whole family are unconscious. I'm hanging on in there, but my face has gone blue, and I'm feeling decidedly dizzy. Can I breathe out yet? Not yet, Andrew. I'll tell you when. And David says, don't worry about being in or out of the EU. I don't know why people are in such of a tizzy over it. We're all doomed regardless, unless, of course, somebody does something quick about this pesky capitalist system. You see, people are saying that capitalism is a bad thing. And capitalism isn't a bad thing. It's this twisted way that a vanishingly few number of people have managed to twist capitalism to their own ends. Because actually, capitalism is a pretty good idea. It's given us all this stuff. Look around you, all of this stuff. You'd miss your stuff, wouldn't you? And capitalism has given you that. But it's just become a bit twisted. It's become bent. Epsom. Hello, Martin.
Hi, Nick.
Martin.
I wanted to let you know who still reads The Guardian.
Oh, yes.
Other than my parents who are in their mid-60s.
Whom?
Who? Steve Bannon.
Steve Bannon reads The Guardian?
It's his favourite newspaper.
I very much doubt that.
It says so in the book Fire and Fury.
Ah, Steve Bannon.
The greasy version of Darth Vader.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, The Guardian's his favourite newspaper, and him and the alt-right actually quite like the mainstream media, and they'd love to be sort of admired by them, but because they never paid them much attention, they've run this sort of anti-mainstream media campaign. So the whole
isn't it curious that the anti-mainstream media campaign is being run almost centrally by the most mainstream media magnate on earth that has ever existed. Fox News keeps going on about the mainstream media and acting like the little guy. They're the biggest cable news channel in the world.
Well, I don't know. I don't think you have to worry about that too much longer, because Murdoch's handing over to his sons, who are actually very liberal. So,
I don't think
might turn into The Guardian.
Yeah, sure it will. Yeah, I think a liberal. It depends what you mean by liberal. I mean, you don't have to be very liberal to have issue with some of the output of Fox News. That wouldn't indicate liberalism. That would indicate, well, sanity, centralism.
Well, centralism is under attack sort of all over the world at the moment.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You're not allowed to be centrist anymore. You either have to be extremely left or extremely right on any issue.
Yeah, I mean, if I call Nigel Farage and criticise Trump, the Facebook comments say I'm a Marxist.
Yeah.
But if I criticise Jeremy Corbyn for being too Marxist, then I'm called a centrist dad, which is an insult now. I don't know if you've heard that.
No, I haven't.
A centrist dad is someone who sort of, apart from Iraq, didn't really mind what Tony Blair did, for example.
Well, none of us minded what Tony Blair did. We voted for him over and over again.
Yeah, he was the most successful Labour leader of all time.
Of all time, yeah.
And of course, the very centrist Sadiq Khan is currently the most powerful Labour politician around.
Well, is he? I mean, if he is, he isn't using that power to any great effect, is he? He's just the man who likes to say, no, you can't have that nice new bus. No, you can't have that nice new bridge. No. Yeah, thanks a lot, Sadiq Khan, for all your excellent work.
No.
But, centrism is under sort of attack from both sides. And I feel like maybe a nice centrist, like I think CNN and, I don't know, the BBC's gone a little bit Brexity. Like they need this balance, so they'll get sort of a normal anti-Brexit person on, and then they'll get someone like John Redwood on, and they won't, just for balance, and they won't, sort of criticise him or ask him any kind of difficult questions because they need balance.
Yeah, it's excruciating that. I mean, I like opinions, and if you're, the news should be the facts, but then after that, after we've dealt with the facts, I like opinions, and you won't get that there. You get it here, right enough.
Yeah, absolutely, which is why, LBC's picking off listeners from Radio 4.
Correct.
Which must make Global very happy.
You can only take so much prevaricating, eh?
I mean, my mum listens to Radio 4, and I heard a show where people call into Radio 4 recently.
Oh, God, I can imagine that's fascinating.
Boring!
So maybe they'll start playing sound effects.
Oh, I heard that ninny on another one of the stations who has a phone-in show on the morning. I accidentally was in a room when it was on, and I cannot believe that's on the air, let alone he gets paid like £250,000 a year for presenting it. That was excruciating. But anyway, I think they have delighted us enough. Thanks a lot, Martin. Cheers, mate. So Steve Bannon reads The Guardian. I am stunned. And every single person that's writing The Guardian is rushing to a shower just to get the stink of him off them. I bet he only reads it because it makes him angry. He looks like a man who likes being angry. Principally at nature for what it's done to him. Chertsey, hello, Tony.
Hi there, Nick.
Hey up, Chuck.
Hi there. Who's Steve Bannon anyway?
What?
Who's Steve Bannon anyway?
Do you mean who is he, or who the hell is Steve Bannon think he is?
Well, not who the hell. I mean, I've not heard of him.
You've not heard of Steve Bannon?
No. How would I have heard of him?
Do you get the news?
Yeah, I listen to the radio.
Right.
And occasionally pick up a paper that I found in the train, or on the train, rather.
Well, you might be right. You might be in the majority. I might be. Well, I know my media consumption is not
a lot
normal. I will watch a lot of American late night chat shows, or as many as are shown here, and so I am steeped up to my eyeballs in American politics at the moment because that's where the interest is. I mean, if you've got a choice between people muttering in, like grey people muttering in meeting rooms, which is what politics is in this country, or a giant orange ape throwing his poop around his cage, you're gonna want to watch the ape, right?
Oh, well,
and so that's what I've been doing, and so I know who Steve Bannon is, and I know who the whole cast of eccentric characters are. It's just you want to keep up, Tony, because all this stuff is flashing by, and in the future, this will be one of the most amazing historical periods in history. Historical periods in history. Yeah, more or less. Yeah, pay attention, Tony, because you're living it right now.
Yeah. I went into one of the biggest booksellers in this country recently, and
to find my book.
Well, I know I couldn't buy it.
You couldn't buy my book?
No, you have to buy it online.
Yeah, you have to buy it from the world's richest man. Yeah.
Oh, what? Elon Musk?
No, he's not the world's richest man. Jeff Bezos.
Oh, I haven't heard of him either.
Oh my God, he's the man who owns Amazon.
Oh, I see. Oh, right, yeah. Okay, well, that's something else I've learned today. Marvellous.
No, you can't buy it in a shop because I'm self-publishing.
Published.
Yeah, I don't have a contract or anything like that. You know, I ain't no professional. I just write this stuff and it takes a year and then I put it out.
Can you tell us roughly what you get from the sale of each book?
A lot, well, bizarrely, almost nothing at all, but a lot less from the $6.99 paperback than the $2.99 ebook, which is why I wish that people were, for two reasons, why I wish people were buying the ebook more than the paperback, is because I get a tiny bit more from the ebook. I mean, it's like a pound or something.
Yeah.
And also it saves trees.
Yes, well, that's right. I like that. I really do like publishing things on the internet, but it's just that there's all that faffing around with passwords and user address and all that,
excruciating,
which I'm annoyed about because it's all I want to do is just get the book, and that's why I love just going into a bookshop and saying, "Have you got this in stock?" And if you haven't, order it, please. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, but
Anyway,
the complicated part of that scenario is finding a bookshop that still exists.
Oh no, there's plenty of the
there?
ones. Yeah, they're in most of the towns. I mean, there's one in Walton, there's one in Staines, there's one in Kingston.
Because every time I don't really go and look for bookshops, but every time I pass one by accident, it's got whitewashed windows and a closed sign on the outside.
Right, yeah. No, I love going into especially bookshops in university towns, because you really get some interesting stuff then.
Really? Because I was at a university for 4 years, and I think I bought a total of 6 books, none of which I actually read.
Yeah. Have you still got them, though, Nick?
No, and that is an indication of which subject you should do, kids. If you want an easy ride and have to do absolutely no work of any kind whatsoever, do psychology.
Yeah.
I think you'll find it's right up your street. Here, Tony, I'm going to have to go because I'm past a break.
Okay.
Here's calling Dulwich. Hello, Robert.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Robert, I'm good, thanks.
You're not too depressed tonight. That's good.
When am I ever depressed?
Oh, sometimes you sound a bit sort of, not happy.
Oh, please. I'm always HAPPY. I'm full of HAPPY-ness.
I've got an idea. You said something earlier that did resonate with me, and that was about how the PFI and how the NHS is lumbered with these ridiculous debts, and how that money that should be going to making people better is essentially ending up in hedge funds, which are the main holders of that PFI debt.
Yeah,
rate.
like they need the money.
Yeah, exactly. No, I recently, my son, he's 9, he broke his tooth, and it was a bad break, and I took him to the dentist, and they put a temporary thing on, and it kept falling off, so I went to another NHS dentist, and I just wasn't happy. It didn't feel right, so I stumped up the cash and went to see a private dentist. And when they took the cap off, Nick, the room stank with the infection that was in his tooth.
Oh.
It was horrible. And my suspicion was confirmed that, if this wasn't treated properly, it could eventually infect the bone, and then you'd have a real trouble. And, he'd been put on a waiting list to go and see a proper pediatric dentist.
Right. Just to clear this up, which third world country were we talking about you had this treatment done in?
It's the United Kingdom.
Ah, that one.
Yeah, that's the one. So anyway, it cost me 240 quid, and I said to the dentist, and she said, "Do you want to proceed and we'll get this all sorted out?" And I said, "Look, I can't afford it. I'm a trainee teacher now." And I said, "This is going to cost thousands, right?" And she said, "Look, we can probably do it for 1,200 quid." And not really.
What were they doing for £1,200?
Well, he was going to have root canal to clear out the infection. You have to go about 4 or 5 times.
Oh.
And then they're going to, because the root hasn't formed properly at the base, it's a bit more complex. And the lady I said to her, "Look, I'm on the list at King's, and I was hoping a letter might get me to the top of that list, because clearly this needs to be seen to." And she said she trained there, and, I wouldn't get, the service I would get with them would be the same I'd get at King's, but I'd have to wait 6 months. Right. And I thought, well, this is mental, because if he gets an infection, it's going to cost them even more if it goes to the bone. So anyway, I used to be in business, and as I was walking away on the third or fourth time I was there, and I was looking at them working. It was a really swanky address. It was just off Harley Street, all the rest of it. I thought, how can they do it for 1,200 quid? And because she said to me, it would probably cost the NHS more. And I was thinking, what if you went to your... Because you said something else earlier. You said when you go and see your GP or you go and see a normal dentist, they basically refer you, don't they?
Yeah, they don't really do anything, but they know a man or a woman who does.
Precisely. So why not, at that point, the dentist says, yep, I confirm that this guy needs X amount, and I'm going to give you basically a voucher for 600 quid that you can redeem a private practice, thus reducing the strain on the NHS, right, and saving them the money, because it would cost the NHS 1,200, possibly 1,500 quid.
Well, we have a uniquely bizarre system in this country, and we do cling to it as though it is as though we've been given a gift that no other nation on earth has. This sort of universal health care. Every other nation that is our direct competitor has universal health care. It's just that they organise it in a more efficient and better way than we do. It costs us personally more or less the same. I mean, other countries pay a little bit more in tax, but the actual amount that you pay overall for your healthcare is more or less the same. A little bit more in the countries that have the better outcomes. But what they don't have is this insistence that you have to go and see a man or a woman to go and see a man or a woman. If you've got something wrong with your tooth, or something wrong with your ear, nose, throat, knees, and elbows, then you immediately go to the specialist concerned, and then they will make a judgment one way or another. You don't go to the GP, who then sends you to someone else. Your GP knows it's your elbow because you've told him it's your blooming elbow.
You see, I think, whenever we talk about the NHS, it gets into a left, right, it's going to be privatised. I don't think it ever actually, I don't think the Tories are trying to privatise it, not in the sense that you look free, but you see, I think the NHS, where it really does well, it's amazing at pioneering surgery, isn't it? I think the first heart transplant was in Britain, I'm sure of that, and it's really good at the
was it? I thought it was in South Africa. But you might be right, and I only say that because of a Stevie Wonder song. There's a
Which one was that?
It was on Songs of the Key of Life. It was.
He sang about heart surgery.
Well, it was the song. It was one of the long songs. I think it was after As, and it was a list of people of all colours who had made some great contribution to humankind. And on one of the heart surgery, I think, was a South African, a black man. I'll look that up as you wait, caller. First,
but
heart.
The thing is, what would be wrong with that idea where you get your voucher and you go and redeem it at a place that, all right, they don't do anything else and they just do root canal surgeries, and because they just do that, they're really good and they can get it done at a better price. And I'm not saying that espousing capitalism or whatever. I just wanted my son's tooth to be sorted and not to have the rot setting in there.
And how old's your son again?
He's 9 years old.
Oh.
I'll tell him that tomorrow. He'll like that. But why can't we have these conversations? It seems we can have them.
Yeah.
But when politicians have them on something like Question Time or whatever, it just always becomes a slanging match.
Yes.
And we don't get anywhere.
Well, the politicians want to make us certain that only they are the ones that we can trust with our health. Whereas almost the reverse of that is true, obviously, because we've trusted both sides with our health, and look at the mess that they've made of it.
I mean, how did we get PFI? I mean, I know it was Brown pushed it, but it was invented by the John Major, but he took it to new heights. When you look at it, all it is saying, the private money's going to build the hospital, and once all the boxes are ticked and it works, then it's handed over to the state, and the state gets lumbered with ridiculous interest bills.
In a nutshell, it's short-termism. You get an immediate benefit in the short term, and it doesn't look like it's cost you anything. But it does cost a massive amount in the long term. But politicians aren't around in the long term, so they don't care.
But Nick, this can't go on like this. I'm a trainee teacher now, mate. I'm 48 years old, and I'm relatively lucky because I worked in a very well-paid job before, and I don't think I'm going to stay in the country. I think I'm going to get my teaching qualification and go abroad because it's not working here. It's just not working. It's not capitalism that's the problem. It's a cronyism and the rigged system, and we all know it.
I was trying to say that in a faltering way before. Capitalism is not the problem. It's this sort of bent and twisted form of capitalism which has emerged probably since the Big Bang, really. So it's Margaret Thatcher's fault. Thanks a lot, Maggie.
Cheers.
All right, cheers, Robert. Yeah, I mean, if capitalism has meant that since the Big Bang, well, since before the Big Bang, since the 1970s, all the extra wealth that has been created in the economy has gone to the top. I think it's top one. Is either the top 1% or the top 0.1%, something like that. Almost nobody has had a real terms pay rise since the 70s. So that indicates to me that something has gone seriously wrong with capitalism, because it's supposed to be a system that creates potential benefit for the many. But it doesn't. Only for the vanishingly small number at the who have been lucky enough to be at the very, very top. Now, they will imagine that they're only at the very, very top because of their innate excellence and genius, or because they have worked tremendously hard. They won't associate their success with luck, which is mostly what it is. Life is luck, by and large. But you tell that to the people at the very, very top, and they will poo-poo the notion. Henry says, what I want to know is, when we leave the EU, do we get duty-free booze and baccy on day trips to France again? No, I wouldn't think so. Dave says, went to see my GP for 10 minutes. No help with my earwax problem, so I booked a private clinic the next day to get my ears sorted out. Yeah, well, a family member of mine has got an ear wax problem. I said, a family member of mine, earwax problem. And I went to the doctor and they said, yes, you have an earwax problem. We don't do that. Oh, it's health and safety. I don't know. The GP doesn't do anything medical anymore because of health and safety concerns. So you just get to sit in the waiting room for a while and enjoy the posters on the wall, and then you get to go home. For the benefit of your health. And they said, you have to go to hospital now to get your blooming ear waxes, your ears syringed. You have to go to hospital now. Great. So, okay, well, the sign is up. When can we be seen? And they said, it'll be, as in the NHS terms, almost straight away. Only 6 months. They had to say it twice, like that, really loudly. Couldn't hear a word they were saying. They can't even syringe your ears on the NHS now. They'll save your life if you are bleeding out of your ears. But anything other than emergency, apparently we haven't got the money because we've spent it all on the Queen's Palace. And we'll be spending it all on the wedding of Hazza and Sparkles. Oh, they're so lovely. Lovely couple. They do a lot of work for charity. The whole country's lost its mind. Here's calling Oxford. Dean.
Hello there, Rick.
Yes,
nice
Dean.
to speak to you.
Dean in Oxford.
Coming in defence of the health service.
Yes.
Basically, 10 years ago, I'll be as quick as I can. 10 years ago, I was struck down with a mystery illness, and I was rushed into hospital where I stayed for nearly 4 weeks while they found out what was going on. And I had a life-threatening condition, and once they'd done all their tests, they found out that they could actually control it with drugs. And I was able to come home, and I see my GP every 6 weeks for a full checkup, even now, and that was 10 years ago. So I see him every 6 weeks, and if the slightest thing he finds, he sends me straight to hospital. Once you're in the hospital system, I found that it's very easy to be referred to other consultants I was seeing one consultant who had done a CAT scan, and they found something wrong and sent me to a liver specialist within a week. I had an appointment, I was seeing him. And recently, 2 months ago, I was in my wheelchair and going through the precinct, and dust blew up and went into my eye. And I was taken to the eye hospital in Oxford, only to find that a bit of metal had blown up into my eye, a very thin piece of metal. And he said, well, we need to take that out, and while we're there, you've got a cataract starting, we'll take that out at the same time.
Blimey, so, I was going to say you hit a stroke of luck there, but it was actually the opposite of that. You were lucky to be able to get treated, Toot Sweet, but what you just described to me, Dean, is the NHS stepped in when your life was at risk, and that is the absolute minimum you should expect of a health service. You know, and I'm sorry, Dean, but I get calls like this when I bang on about the NHS. I get calls like this all the time saying, oh, well, you know, the NHS were fantastic because they saved my life. Well, that's what they're for.
Every year for a checkup.
You're not listening to a word I'm saying, are you? That's what they're for, Dean. Why are we surprised that they save people's lives? That's what the NHS is for. But the truth is, it's not a health service anymore. It's an emergency service in almost all regards. I mean, there's doubtless incidents when people could call in and say, oh, well, I got, an ingrowing toenail treated that afternoon that I complained about it. Well, I'm sure that there would be incidents that you could to describe like that, but they don't cancel out the argument that we don't have a health service anymore. You know, individual incidences do not cancel out an overall. I can't think what the word is. Like a trend. The trend is that if it's an emergency, go to the NHS. Like a doctor told me this a while ago. He said, if it's an emergency, go to the NHS. If it's anything else, if you can possibly afford it, go private. But most people can't afford to go private. So, like everything else, there is a two-tier health service in this country. The absolute rock bottom service is available to people who haven't got any money, and instant service is available to those that do. And to pretend otherwise is to ignore the facts. But I'm glad that you got seen there, Dean. It wouldn't be accurate to describe it as being lucky, because it was the inverse of that. But yeah. Simon says you're spot on. If it's an emergency, that the NHS is brilliant. I was showing an old couple over a house today, and the guy fell over and passed out. The ambulance was there within 5 minutes. He was okay, by the way. Well, they must have been just passing. 5 minutes? It depends where you are. I mean, some people, like where I am, the ambulance has to come from absolutely miles away. If anything remotely emergency-related happened to me, I'd be dead by the time it got there. As would everybody around me. I mean, it has to come from absolutely miles away now. So even it's not even an emergency service anymore. This says, I work as a first-year dentist, and I'm told that a private patient gets a free hot drink. My nurse has to go down and collect my patients instead of them walking up alone, and they get longer clinical time. It's ridiculous. I hate that there is a two-tier healthcare system in this country, and this is why I want to work in hospital. P.S. Dentists earn way too much. Oh, I don't know. I mean, how much does a dentist earn? For staring into other people's mouths all day long.
Disgusting.
Ugh. But you do get a lot of free cocaine, so, you know, there is that. I knew a dentist once who, I think he may have gone to prison or just been disbarred, who got a little too keen on the medicine in the cabinet. I don't know why it has to be cocaine. Why do they need to have such a what I understand is a very tempting drug? Just for like a tooth problem. This says the state of the NHS, poverty and homelessness are indicators of the subculture that exists and that will continue to drive a wedge through our society. World War III probably will resolve the issue sooner than later with Donny in the driving seat. Well, let's looking on the bright side. How about looking on the brighter side? There's, I wonder if I've got details of this. People are talking about, global pandemic. It's okay, nothing to worry about. Fears of a global pandemic are mounting as experts have warned that there'll be no way to stop a killer disease from claiming millions of lives. What a happy thought. These concerns were raised at the annual World Economic Forum in Davos, and they come exactly 100 years after the 1918 Spanish flu that claimed, good grief, flu. 50 million people died from flu in 1918. Holy macaroni. And, you know, it really does... people have been going on about the flu season this year and how dreadfully awful it is. And yet, people, they sit on the trains and the buses and the tubes and they're just openly coughing. They don't put their hands up and they're just sneezing and into their hand, and then they'll put their hand right onto the handrail. Ugh, covered in all sorts, all over it. Well, if people were actually dying around you, then you would have to treat those people with a certain... you'd have to correct them sternly. But you can't correct those people. Somebody was in this building opposite me a couple of weeks ago. It was just it was the beginning of my Christmas run, and I had like 17 shows in a row. So the very last thing, and I was really, really concerned about getting ill, because you know you work until 1 o'clock for 17 days in a row. That really takes it out of you. But if you're ill as well, and I was just a little bit panicky in the run up to those shows. And I was sitting, and somebody was opposite me going, and just staring into their screen and coughing all over the entire area without putting their hand up. And I said, "Oh, have you got a cold?" And she said, "Am I bothering you?" I bet my glamorous assistant knows who that was.
I was just trying to work
Let's
it out.
name them and shame them.
No,
I'd actually never seen it. Yeah, I'd never seen it before. "Am I bothering you?" And I said, "Only if I get it." Oh, Donald Trump said something fantastically stupid. Can you believe that?
Yes.
Yeah, but I can't tell you about it until 12. Fortunately, there's only a minute to go, because it's embargoed. Well, I get these things, everybody in the news business gets these stories all the time. We can tell you about it, but you can't tell anybody else. Shh, it's a secret. Why do they do this? This story is embargoed until 0001, as in 1 minute past midnight, tomorrow, which is in 2 minutes' time. Can you wait?
No.
So I'll tell you about that and much else besides, assuming we live long enough. Donald Trump has been talking to Piers Morgan.
He's a great guy. He's a good guy. He's a good person.
Yeah, that's just you that thinks that, Donny. And the discussion that they had with each other has been embargoed until this moment right now. But first I must take some of these calls, because it would be rude to keep them hanging on longer, because some of these people have been waiting for a dog's age. Richmond, hello Barry.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, Barry.
Hi there. So I'm actually just calling up to talk about, the whole pay scale thing. You know, I run a fish and chip shop. It's a lovely shop. And I've been able to give myself a pay rise in a good old-fashioned 19 years.
Right.
And, you know...
Yeah. It's Croydon. He'd been waiting for like 25 minutes to say that. Croydon, hello Vicky.
It wasn't much good, was it?
Terrible.
Really? Yeah.
No, I run a chip shop, you know. I haven't given myself a pay rise in excruciating.
But I phoned up about the NHS, not to moan, but just to sort of talk about clinical pathways.
Clinical pathways?
Yeah, basically I'm experiencing the bureaucracy of them at the moment. Just before Christmas I fell ill with what they thought was gallbladder pain.
Yeah.
So I went and had a scan, and the scan showed that I had an inflamed stomach, and it was just being referred to my gallbladder from my stomach. So anyway,
Well, your stomach was was referred to your gallbladder.
No, my stomach was referring pain to my gallbladder. So anyway, I felt pretty rough, as you can probably imagine, and I was put on some medication and sent off, and they wanted to do an endoscopy, and I was a little bit reluctant. I'm not going to lie, don't like the idea of having a camera shoved down my throat.
Oh, it's your throat. Because when you said endoscopy, I thought maybe it was.
That's a colonoscopy.
Right. That should be called an endoscopy because
actually,
it's
Yeah, it should actually.
refers to your end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, they're now talking about doing both, which is bothering me a little bit.
See, an endoscopy, if it goes in your mouth, nobody would describe their mouths as the end part of their body, would they? That's the beginning part.
It's endoscope, isn't it? It's for the. Oh God, what is it? What's the name of the thing? I should know this.
What thing?
It's a thing. It's a thing down your throat.
Your epiglottis.
No.
Your stomach. Is your stomach down your throat? More
No,
or
not the
less.
esophagus, is it?
It's
That's
in
not
that
right.
direction.
It's in that general direction.
Mhm.
Yeah. But anyway, so I went to my GP and got followed up, and I needed to get my medication last week that the hospital had given me. They hadn't sent my discharge summary, so the delightful receptionist at my doctor's surgery said to me, "Can you go and get your discharge summary, because that will say what we need to give you." But that's not really my job as a patient. That's more theirs, and they can do it in 2 minutes, as opposed to the 2 hours that it took me to do it. So.
But I bet she said that next to a sign that said, if you abuse us in any way, shape or form, or even question our authority, we will refuse to see you, and you can sit there till you die.
Exactly, and that was the sort of attitude I was getting from her as well. So anyway, she whilst I was doing it, she did it anyway, which annoyed me even more. Anyway, I went in and had a polite word with the practice site manager.
You took it to the next level.
Yeah, I did, and I was basically told that I had to have an endoscopy, otherwise they'd stop the medication that I was on. When I queried the fact that there's actually a blood test, a breath test, and a stool test that I could have to diagnose what the cause of the the problem with my stomach is.
Yes.
I was told the clinical pathways don't suggest that. I have to have an invasive procedure instead of something that's completely non-invasive. And if I want the non-invasive thing, I have to have the endoscopy to be referred to go and see the gastroenterologist. How stupid is that?
So, in other words, you have absolutely no control over your own body. At the moment you present yourself ill in any way, shape, or form, then you are you're their property.
Basically, and they said, if you don't have the endoscopy, we will stop. I'm on this medication called lansoprazole, which is like an antacid, but it's a very strong one. If I don't go and have the endoscopy, they will stop the medication that's actually making me feel better. I'm pretty certain that will probably infringe my human rights somewhere.
And you know what would have happened? Now, I don't know that this is true. Please don't take my word for this. I'm not a medical professional. But what I would guess would happen if that you were paying Vicky.
I'd get that breath test.
Well, what would happen is they would take on board what you want, and they would say, "Certainly, madam. Is there anything else we can do for you?"
And would you like a coffee?
Yes, and a biscuit, and a massage.
Yes. And a comfortable seat.
Yes.
Yeah, but none of that happens on the NHS.
No.
And it's all to do with clinical pathways, and they're a pile of poo, and they don't take into consideration the individual and what the individual's wishes are.
I think part of the problem. Yeah, part of the problem is that they have. I think part of the problem is us, that we have got this American disease of suing for everything at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
And so the NHS is paying out hundreds of millions of pounds a year for their cack-handed ineptitude, which is being taken advantage of to some extent by people who are suing them for free money. So what they're doing to avoid that happening, as with many other industries that have taken on onerous health and safety regulations, it's our fault. So what they're doing is they're taking the decision-making away from individuals and they are standardising it. So regardless of what it is that is your issue, you will be put into a template. This is what we do for this, regardless of what the person themselves actually wants.
And we will name them clinical pathways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, the weird thing is, like, I'd said to them, when I was talking to the practice manager, I worked for the NHS, and I pointed out everything that the receptionist had done that I wouldn't have done.
You work for the NHS?
Yeah.
Now, does that make you... Now, be honest with me now, Vicky. Does that make you a very bad patient? Yes.
No, not in this case. No, that's not fair.
Now, when you say no, are you actually meaning yes?
No, when I'm saying no, I know what they can do and what they can't, what they can do prior to doing an endoscopy, and they're not doing any of it, and I just feel a little bit like, come on. You know.
Now, I would have thought that somebody who works for the business would have got, you know, extra special treatment. They would, you know, everybody else would be waiting in the on hard plastic chairs in the waiting room for 6 hours, but they would magically open a curtain for insiders to be whisked through for a top-class first-rate treatment. But that doesn't happen like that, does it?
No, I work in mental health, so you know we're not seen like that. They don't even think of us as nurses. So, you know, no, we don't get any special treatment at all. I did once before. I got put to the top of a list once when I was working in an outpatients department, and that was kind of handy, but that's only because they wanted me back to work quickly.
Now, is there a hierarchy then, as you've just intimated, of medical professionals? Now, the way you just described it was that mental health professionals are at the bottom of the ladder.
Well, no, it's not so much they're at the bottom of the ladder. It's just that it's not seen as real nursing, when in actual fact it is pretty much.
Right.
You know, like there's a lot of physical, like complex physical needs.
But is there a hierarchy though? I mean, not an official hierarchy, but just the way in which medical people think of each other. Because I would imagine like a brain surgeon would be at the top of the tree. Although, having said that, there is that fellow in America called Ben Carson, and if you don't know who he is, then look him up. He's an actual brain surgeon. He seems to be single-handedly disputing the notion that brain surgery is another way of saying, if you're a brain surgeon, it's a way of saying smart. But I would expect that a heart surgeon, somebody like that, would be at the very top, and somebody who deals with the end would be at the very bottom.
Quite literally.
Yeah.
No, I have worked in the physical health settings, so sort of general nursing, and what I have found is there's a hierarchy amongst, whereas in mental health you're part of a multidisciplinary team. They consider, no matter what grade you are, they consider you a healthcare professional. In general nursing, not so much if you're lower grades. Like if you're an untrained member of staff, there's a word for you that I can't say on air. But
really? It's that bad.
Yeah, it can be. I remember asking my department sister what she wanted me to call her, and she said sister blah blah blah, and I was thinking, God, we're still in the 50s. It was pretty bad.
My mind's reeling. Okay, well, leave us with that thought, and I appreciate it. Thanks, Vicky. Believe it. Lewisham. Hello, Jake.
Hello, hi, Nick. Right, okay, I'm just speaking to your researcher, actually, and I was just saying that there is an inferred contract between the government and the people on the basis that the agreement, which is inferred, is that we pay our taxes and they protect us. So if something goes wrong, we call the police. We pay our taxes, and so if we get ill, obviously in the UK, if we get sick, we can go to an emergency, we can go see our doctor, we don't have to pay for it like other countries do. At the moment, the government, in my opinion, are failing miserably in upkeeping their side of that inferred contract. And so for that reason, I think when it comes to the next general election, the people have to decide for themselves who they would like to have an agreement / inferred contract with, because the current government are doing terribly. Jeremy Hunt went in to either get the boot or to get demoted and came out with more power. Boris Johnson is running around the whole country doing whatever the hell he wants, and it's just we're not being governed at the moment, as far as I can see. What we have at the moment is I can't even find a word for it. What we have at the moment is a situation where we have a sitting prime minister who knows what she's doing because she's been in government a long time. I don't doubt our current prime minister knows what she's doing. But the question is, as far as the government goes, because there is no clear leadership, because there's weak leadership, pretty much the country isn't being governed at the moment. I still can't believe, life of me, how in God's name the people have sat back and watched the police numbers get culled so much to the point where we've seen kind of a rise in crime. We've seen the police numbers cut so much that when it comes to little things, well, not little, when it comes to terrorism, etc., we're all sitting around thinking, oh my God, is it going to happen here? Is it going to happen there? But the police numbers have been cut. Yet we're supposed to be like, a heightened alert for terrorism. When it comes to hospitals, etc., I cannot believe for the life of me that any government in any civilized country would allow any person who has been a contributing taxpayer with a deferred contract with the government to go without a hip operation. I can't believe that anybody would be able to waltz into this country. Like, for example, the basic simple thing with the NHS, like, for example, if someone comes from, let's say, France, they're sick in this country and they have to go use the NHS. There is actually a tool in which the government, well, the NHS is supposed to claim back the money from that person's respective country. The fact of the matter is, we just don't do it. Much like the laws that says that if someone comes here from a foreign country, a foreign European country, if they come here and they don't get employment within 3 months, we can beat them out.
Correct.
We don't enforce these laws.
No.
And so, because we don't enforce it, we waste money. Never mind about all the other rest of the waste. But the biggest reason I was calling you was just to say that the government is inept, in my opinion, and also the government is failing. You don't physically have an actual contract with the government. However, like the Costa Nostra of the old days, when they came around to collect their money, you better get it, because if you don't give it to them...
Well, yeah, but the difference is that the Cosa Nostra actually delivered a service.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they made sure your business didn't blow up.
Exactly my point. The Costa Nostra came around to collect their money, and they did deliver a service.
Yeah.
The government at the moment are collecting... What was it? I think I learnt this on your show, actually. What was it? £2 billion a day we're collecting?
A day, yeah. £2 billion
a day from the taxpayers, and
and what are we getting for it?
In that contract.
Exactly right, yeah. I mean, where on earth does the money go, apart from weapons of mass destruction? Other than that, I can't imagine.
Why on earth do we want to spend all that money and in getting a nuclear deterrent that we hopefully would never have to fire? It just doesn't make any logical sense.
No. Well, apart from it allows the elected leaders to strut about on the world stage, kidding on that this is still a vitally important country. But we aren't any more than Belgium is, or Spain, or any of our neighbours who are doing economically better than we are.
I completely agree, Nick. And on the subject of Russia posing a threat to the UK, Russia's been posing a threat to the UK since the end of the Second World War. The Russians, they're heavily invested here. Would you go and invade your bank if your bank was making you money? We are basically the Russian bankers. They would never invade us for that reason. We're making them money. There's so much Russian money invested in this country, in the west of London, in the centre of London, we know what the Russians are doing behind the scenes in terms of their little hackers, etc., etc. But the fact of the matter is, the Russians are heavily invested in this country. They won't invade their own back.
Well, I think we have to take the recent pronouncements of doom from both the Defence Secretary and the various heads of the military, warning us that we're all going to die because of Russian interference. We have to take that on board with the understanding that there is a defence review underway. The government is deciding how much money to throw at them, and so naturally they're going to try and make us all, fearful of our lives, so that they can ensure that their budget doesn't get cut.
I understand. Honestly, Nick, the first thing that came to my mind when Boris Johnson made his announcement this week about the NHS and trying to get more money, and the defence chief came out with what he said, the first thing that came to my mind is they are misdirecting / trying to distract us from something. But the only question is, I don't know what it is they're distracting us from. Those are misdirection tactics, basic misdirection tactics. It's not propaganda. It's just they're trying to misdirect our attention in one direction. It's like It's the same thing as, what was his name? Harry Houdini once made an elephant disappear in the middle of a theatre for the people. It's misdirection.
Harry Houdini.
Harry Houdini.
Harry Houdini made an elephant disappear?
Yeah, he did. He once made an elephant disappear in a what's it called, in a theatre filled with people. And
I'd like to see him make
it. Was
I'd like to see him make an elephant fly. That'd be a good idea. All right, thanks a lot, Jake. Cheers, mate. Almost just about got through that call and heard pretty much everything that he had to say, although his mobile phone was working against him. When are they going to make a mobile phone that can actually make telephone calls? I mean, does that sound like anything that's on the horizon anytime soon? No. Even the ones that cost £1,000 can't make phone calls. You can track the stars in the skies with one, and you can see what time your bus is going to arrive. But can it make a phone call? No. Not yet. They're working on it. Painful. I'll do some texts and emails and such. This says there are plenty of reality programs out there. How about auditions for new politicians? They could call the show the MP Factor. Yeah, it's a no from me. I think one of the reasons that this is going to play right into the old argument that politicians should have some experience in the field in which they have authority and some degree of control, but then all sorts of other things come into play. You know, if they have spent a lifetime in the medical profession, for instance, then they would have perhaps a conflict of interest. They would put business the way of their friends, but I'm sure that stuff happens anyway. But I think one of the reasons is that essentially none of the cabinet actually have any idea what they're doing. I mean, the priceless example is Boris Johnson is our chief diplomat. Can you think of a less diplomatic person on the face of the earth?
I can be more presidential than anybody.
Apart from him. By the way, he, I guess I haven't got around to this yet, but I can tell you what he said to Piers Morgan. A wide variety of incredibly stupid things, as you would expect. But I'll come to that in a minute. I haven't got time now before this break. Our Defence Secretary. Are you aware of his sterling history in military affairs? Our Defence Secretary, Gavin Williamson, used to work for a company that made pottery. That's it. As far as I'm aware, he has no military experience of any kind whatsoever, and he's in charge of the military. I think Theresa May is actually following Donald Trump's lead. We're distancing ourselves from Europe, which seems to be run along sane lines, and we're allying ourselves with the orange ape in the White House, who, like I said, is throwing his poop around this cage in order to distract the hillbilly local yokels from the Dingaling states from realising that they've been sold a dud. They've been conned. That the billionaire New Yorker actually isn't on their side. Gosh, what a surprise. Richard says, the news will keep going online until the Russians cut the cables. The Russians aren't going to cut the cables because, I would imagine that a vast amount of their money is here. And if the banks fall flat on their faces, well, they'll lose a lot of their money. I mean, if you were a Russian and you had billions and billions and billions of pounds that you'd purloined from the good Russian people, all those oligarchs that, one day they were selling, plastic lawn chairs for 30p each, and they were living in a cardboard box, and then the next day they were worth £30 billion, as if by magic. Where would you put your money? Would you put your money in Russia, where Vladimir Putin could get it? No! You'd put it in good old Britain, because we hide the money from the international criminal super rich. That's what we do for a living. Of course you'd put it here. They don't want to mess with us. They don't need to invade. They bought the part of the country that the Qataris don't own. Mike says, maybe with people doing more reading because of the availability of e-books, they've decided to buy proper books too. Oh, is he talking about my book? Maybe. This is probably a message that came in a long time ago. To recap, I am surprised at the book that I've just released. What's it called? Oh, thanks for asking. It's called My Tremendous Year in the Huge Shadow of Donald Trump's Awesome Orange Bigliness. And I'm sort of taken aback that the paperback, which because of the necessity that you got cut down a tree and print it up and then post it, it costs way more than the e-book. There's nothing I could do about that. Them's the rules. Paperbacks are outselling e-books for my effort. I'm surprised by that. But anyway, I think Mike's talking about that when he says maybe with people doing more reading because of the availability of e-books, they've decided to buy proper books too. I haven't heard any reports of bookcase sales going down. So if we're not buying books, the bookcase industry will be coming to the end of its chapter. See what he did there? Yeah, I mean, nobody ever thinks of the poor bookcase manufacturing organisations. The thing with books is, they're like CDs, they're not very attractive to look at. They're jarring on the eye. They're not a calming thing to look at. The end of books. So, like a whole pile of books is unattractive visually. This says it's not short-termism, it's deliberate destruction of the NHS so that we will believe that privatisation is the only way to go. Well, the thing with people keep banging on about privatisation as though that's the only alternative. Like the only alternative to the NHS is the hideous, warped, bizarre system that they have in America. It's not. There are other countries out there. I mean, I know they speak foreign, but there are other places that have other people that have better health outcomes than we do. And it's a mixture, just as every health service is a mixture of private and government run, like in France and the Netherlands and Sweden and Denmark and Belgium and Germany and Switzerland and everywhere else you've ever heard of. It's not just us in America. Other people get ill too. And of course, their health service is part private. I mean, all the companies that make the medicines, they're private concerns. It costs £100 million to make to bring a medicine to market. I'm not making that up. That's true. £100 million. So they're going to want a profit out of it. So all of the people that make medicines and the machines that go bing and bong and that's the sound that they make. They're all provided by a private company too. Two intensely disliked people sat down to have a chit-chat. And one was Piers Morgan and one was Donald Trump. And now I can tell you about it because it was this piece of information that I'm about to impart was embargoed until about half an hour ago. It's taken me that long to get to this. US President Donald Trump has said he is not aware of any invitation for him to attend Prince Harry's wedding to Meghan Sparkle. Yeah, that's because they haven't invited you, Donny. In a wide-ranging interview with Piers Morgan, Trump said, not that I know of, when asked if he was given an invite. Yeah, definitely not. No, they don't want you to go. That's the reason why. They hate you like poison. Harry's nuptials... That's what it says here. Harry's nuptials with the American actress have captured the imagination. His nuptial. Hey, Harry, we can from here. I can see your nuptials.
Disgusting.
Harry's nuptials with the American actress have captured the imagination of her compatriots. Really. And will be seen to strengthen the bond between the UK and the US. Oh, for crying out loud! You must be kidding. I wonder if it is just Americans that are interested in this. I just don't believe that people in this country are that bothered. We just don't care one way or the other. Prince Harry. Like we don't care about wills either. They're just not interesting enough. I mean, at least, well, Hazza is a little bit more interesting than wills. Hey, Hazza.
Want to score some pot?
A little bit more interesting. Not much. I mean, what do they actually do? About once a month, they glad hand some toothless flag wavers and get given a wilting posy bought in a garage, which they'll hand to one of their people and they'll stick it straight in the bin. Massive amounts of photographs are taken and printed in the press the following day that make it look as though this is what they do for a living, but they don't. They only show up for events like that about once a month. And it's not work, by the way. Like they'd like you to think that it is, but one of their work days, in inverted commas, would be the best day of our working life. Harry's nuptials with the American actress captured the imagination of her compatriots, but Markle has been a vocal critic of the former reality star Donald Trump, backing his rival Hillary Clinton.
Oh, no.
And suggesting before the 2016 election that she would leave the US if he won. And she did. She actually did. When Piers Morgan pointed out that Meghan Sparkle had labelled the billionaire divisive and a misogynist, he said, "Well, I hope they're still happy," making a mental note. "I'll get her. And as for him..."
Like to punch him in the face.
Yeah. The president also offered hope that the US could come back in from the cold after opting out of the Paris Accord on climate change. But he just agrees with whoever he's talked to last. This is a decision, you will remember, drew scorn from the international community, which is pretty much the same reaction to everything that Trump has ever done. And it also drew a disappointment from Prime Minister Theresa May. She wasn't angry, she was just disappointed. And Donnie's been sore about that ever since, because Donnie doesn't like to be told off. Donnie don't like shade. And he just went on and on about it. He said about the Paris Accord, he said it would have been a disaster. He said, "I'm completely out of it." Well, that explains a lot. No, he meant he's completely out of the Paris Accord. He said, first of all, it was a terrible deal for the United States. If they made a good deal, there's always a chance we'd get back. But it was a terrible deal for the United States. It was unfair to the United States. If somebody said, go back into the Paris Accord, it would have to be a completely different deal because we had a horrible deal. Would I go back in? Yeah, I'd go back in. As you know, I like Emmanuel, the French president. I would love to, but it's got to be a good deal for the United States. He has no idea what he's talking about. A good deal for as though first of all the United States is not part of the world, and that what is good for the world would not also be good for the United States. Part one. Part two, what deal is he talking about? It was an accord. These weren't legally binding issues that they signed up for. It's for the benefit of the human race to try and do better. That's not a terrible deal for the United States, you great orange galumph. Can we get President Trump to appear on this show? Tell him I'm a big fan. It's a terrible deal, really bad deal. He's still perpetuating this notion that he is a great deal maker. What he knows about business, you could write on the back of a stamp. He knows how to fail at business, and that's about it. This notion that he's a great deal maker comes from that book that he didn't write. Or read, I bet. The Art of the Deal. His notion of a good deal is where, and he said this, where he wins and everybody else loses, which is an insight into the psyche of the man-baby that is the leader of the free world. Everybody else must lose. That's a good deal to him. Which is, of course, a horrible deal if you ever want to make a deal with anybody ever again for the rest of your life. If that's how you're going to a deal, no wonder he failed and failed and failed and failed and failed. The only thing he was successful at was getting born to a really rich man who gave him a lot of money. And it's kind of it's alarming that if he had done nothing with that money, if he had just put it on the stock market a tracker fund with all of the money that his dad gave him, he would be worth more today than he claims that he is actually worth. And a lot of people ridicule the claims that he makes as much as he says he does.
I make $400 million a year, so what difference does it make?
Yeah, sure you do. He would be worth more now if he had done nothing. All of those deal makings, all of those contractors that he didn't pay, all of those people that he stiffed, all of those enmities that he brought to life, all of the fighting and the misery, the trail of destruction that he left behind him, trying to smash all criticism into the ground. This is why he's going to run again, is because people keep telling him he's doing a bad job. And his popularity levels are so stratospherically. Nobody has, in their history of presidency, nobody has ever been more unpopular than him. But he can't stand that. Because his entire life he's been trying to, I don't know, make his daddy approve of him. It's got to be something elemental like that. So he has to take those criticisms and the people who are criticizing him and smash them into the ground, which is what he's spent a lifetime doing, getting back at people. Richard Branson said he met him, and it was the most dispiriting meeting with a businessman he'd ever had, said Richard Branson. He just spent the entire time, Trump spent the entire time telling Branson how much he was going to get back at all the people that had wronged him. They didn't lend him any money and, pulled out of his business and wouldn't take his phone calls and all the rest of it. That's why he's going to run again, in order to teach us all a lesson. And he'll win as well. That's the alarming thought, that he will actually win a second term. I believe that. Like I said that all along. It gets so tiring being right about everything all the time. He's going to run again, and he's going to win. Because there was, I don't know whether he did it. Probably didn't. He didn't think this through. But the smart, nasty, evil people that are around him thought this through. Give the people a pay cut, a tax cut, initially. Over the long term, that's going to be taken away from them, and they'll be earning less in the long term. But people don't think in the long term. They think right now. I just got my pay, and because of Donald Trump's tax cuts, I got more this month than I got last month. And those tax cuts won't be taken away until after the next election. That's just pretty smart. I mean, it's basic politicking. It's it's pretty low blow stuff. But it will win in the next election because people will think, yeah, that's right. He said he was going to give us a tax cut, and he did give us a tax cut. They won't think that, in the future they will be earning less money, and that 99% of the tax cuts went to the 1%. They don't think about that. Got another $1. Be able to buy some biscuits. Piers Morgan and Donald Trump on the same program. Wow, I will definitely be looking forward to watching something else at the time. Yes, so speaking of the Paris Climate Accord, by the way, which America should sign up to, everybody, for the benefit of humankind, of this beautiful planet that we are currently living on. Let's not mug it up too quick, eh? There's this website called globalwarming.berens in the Netherlands, and they describe what would happen with each degree of warming of the Earth. Are you ready?
No.
Between 1 and 2 degrees of warming, at this level, which is expected within 40 years, the hot European summer of 2003 will be the annual norm. Hey, doesn't that sound fantastic? Anything that could be called a heat wave thereafter will be of Saharan intensity. Even in average years, people will die of heat stress. Well, as long as the latter is not me, I don't mind about that. When it hits 100 degrees, that's when I like it the best. When people start complaining that it's too hot,
stop whining.
That's when I like it a lot. However, not a lot of people will like it, because south of here it's going to get very, very, very hot. Emergency services failed to save more than 10,000 French people in the summer of 2003, apparently. Mortuaries ran out of space as hundreds of dead bodies were brought in each night. Across Europe as a whole, the heatwave is believed to have cost between 22,000 and 35,000 lives. Agriculture too was devastated. Farmers lost $12 billion worth of crops, and Portugal alone suffered $12 billion worth of forest fire damage. And that doesn't even begin to describe what it must like to be a big fat cow. So that's between 1 and 2 degrees of warming. Between 2 and 3 degrees of warming, we should start getting alarmed.
Warning!
Between 2 degrees and 3 degrees, preventing mass starvation will be as easy as halting the cycles of the moon. First, millions and then billions of people will face an increasingly tough battle to survive. To find anything comparable, we'd have to go back to the Pliocene era, it says, the last epoch of the Tertiary period, 3 million years ago. Or, if you are one of those people, then 6,000 years ago, when man used to run around with dinosaurs. There were no continental glaciers in the Northern Hemisphere. Trees grew in the Arctic. Sea levels were 25 metres higher than today's, which would mean that Paris would be underwater. So would London, I would assume. The end of the world is nigh. A 3-degree increase in global temperature, possible as early as 2050, could throw the carbon cycle into reverse. Instead of absorbing carbon dioxide, vegetation and soils start to release it all over the place. As the land burns, so the sea will go on rising. Even by the most optimistic calculation, 80% of Arctic sea ice now will be gone, and the rest will soon follow. New York will flood. Well, it'll be clean, a little bit cleaner. People will start being on the move from Central America to Mexico and the US, and from Africa into Europe. That's why he wants to build a wall, keep back the flood of water. Never mind about people. That's between 2 and 3 degrees of warming. This is all conjecture, of course, but if you say it out loud these days, then it instantly becomes a fact. It's science. Between 3 and 4 degrees of warming. Get ready, grip onto something firm. A steady stream of refugees will now include those fleeing from coasts to safer interiors, because they come over here. It'll be millions at a time when storms hit. Where they persist, coastal cities will become fortified islands. The world economy too will be threadbare. The summer will get longer still, as soaring temperatures reduce forests to tinderwood and cities to boiling morgues. Are we alarmed yet?
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Oh my God, the lights have just gone out. Well, see, now that's us doing our bit to save the environment. I've just saved a whole degree. I've just saved millions of people's lives by that brief moment when we had the lights go out. You're welcome. I'm just doing my bit. Between 3 and 4 degrees of warming, temperatures in the home counties could reach 45 centigrade. Holy macaroni, you double it and add 32 to make Fahrenheit, so 45 doubled is 60, and then 60 and 32 is like 112? It's 112. Can you believe that?
No.
It's the sort of climate experienced in Marrakesh. You won't need to take an express to go to Marrakesh.
Groovy.
Droughts will put the southeast of England on the global list of water-stressed areas. I'm getting stressed just thinking about it. Farmers will compete against cities for dwindling supplies from rivers and reservoirs. Hey, South Africa is in a drought situation at the moment. This ain't science fiction. This is not sci-fi. This is sci-fi. Because Cape Town ain't got no water. I bet I can pull up the weather forecast for Cape Town. I bet it hasn't rained in an absolute dog's age. One moment, please. Checking while you wait. CAP, Cape Town. There it is. Right away. See, sunny tomorrow, sunny the next day, 33 degrees. Holy moly. Sunny the following day, and the following day, and the following day. It's going to be sunny for the rest of your lives. No rain on the horizon.
Oh no!
Not for Cape Town. They're going to run out of water within about a month or so. And just think about what that actually means. Running out of water. That means that they won't be able to wash their faces or flush their toilets.
Disgusting.
And that means that hotels are going to have to close, that businesses are going to have to close, because you can't have a business, a building with hundreds of people in an office if you can't flush the toilet. Can you imagine the smell? So this is the actual future that Cape Town is looking at. If it don't rain soon, or they don't find some way around this by constructing desalination plants or something, at vast expense, of course it's a bit late now to start building those, then they're going to have to shut the town. It's the first one to fall flat in its face. Which is a shame, because it's a nice place, as you'll know if you've been there, and if you haven't been there, well, too late. Between 3 and 4 degrees of warming, droughts will put the southeast of England on a water-stressed list. The Lancashire-Humber corridor is expected to be among the worst affected regions, as are the Thames Valley, eastern Devon, and towns already in the flood-prone Severn estuary, and Monmouth and Bristol. The entire English coast from the Isle of Wight to Middlesbrough is classified at very high or extreme risk, as is the whole of Cardigan Bay in Wales, which sounds like more or less everywhere. You'll be all right on the top of Ben Nevis, but that's it. Between 4 and 5 degrees of global warming, we're now looking at an entirely different planet. Ice sheets have vanished, rainforests have burnt, turned to desert. Dry and lifeless, the Alps resemble the high Atlas. Rising seas are scouring deep intercontinental interiors. The cash machine in the wall won't work, and the Sky TV will be interrupted.
Oh no!
Yeah. Miserable. But Donald Trump isn't interested in any of that, because it's a really bad deal. By which he means he didn't sign it. The Kenyan Muslim terrorist who was the previous incumbent of that position, he signed it. You remember Obakarama, don't you? That's back when the world made sense. Whew, well, this has been entertaining.